Listen carefully. This message is not for everyone. If you stumbled upon this video by accident, if something inside you told you, "Don't scroll, stay," if your spirit felt a sudden stillness when you read the title, that is not coincidence. That is recognition. Because there is a power on your life that did not come from this world. It was not learned. It was not taught. It was not inherited from blood or culture. It came from heaven. And demons know it. They cannot touch it. They cannot steal it. They cannot destroy it. But they can sense it. And that is why your life has never been normal. There are people who gain authority by position. And then there are people who carry authority by presence. You are the second kind. You didn't wake up one day and decide to be different. You didn't ask to feel things more deeply. You didn't choose to see through lies while others remained comfortable in illusion. You were marked before you understood language. From the moment you entered this world, heaven placed something inside you that hell immediately recognized. That is why resistance showed up early in your life. That is why confusion tried to wrap around your childhood. That is why pressure came before preparation. Because the power you carry does not come from effort. It comes from assignment. Jesus didn't say, "You will receive power after years of perfection." He said, "You will receive power when the Spirit comes upon you." That power does not negotiate with darkness. Darkness moves out of the way. Have you ever noticed this? Some people can walk into toxic environments and blend in. But when you walk in, energy shifts. Conversations change. People become uncomfortable for no logical reason. You didn't say anything. You didn't do anything. Yet something inside them reacted. That's because demons don't respond to noise. They respond to authority. And authority doesn't shout. It stands. When Jesus entered rooms, demons spoke before he did. Not because he was loud, but because heaven was present. And the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in you. That is not symbolic language. That is spiritual reality. Let this sink in. The attacks you faced were not because you were weak. They were because you were dangerous. Hell does not waste resources on ordinary people. The isolation, the misunderstandings, the false accusations, the sudden betrayals. Those were not random life events. Those were containment strategies. But here's the truth demons hate. Heaven does not empower people without also protecting them. That is why what tried to break you only refined you. That is why what tried to silence you only strengthened your voice. You were never abandoned. You were being preserved. There is a kind of power that makes noise. And then there is a kind of power that makes darkness nervous. What heaven placed inside you is not loud. It does not beg for attention. It does not announce itself in public. It rests. And because it rests, it cannot be shaken. This power does not rise when you feel confident. It does not disappear when you feel weak. It does not depend on your emotions, your energy, or your approval from people. It is not fragile. It is sealed. Demons understand something many humans do not. Power that comes from heaven is not accessed through effort. It flows through alignment. That is why they cannot touch it. You see, darkness can manipulate emotion. It can provoke fear. It can exaggerate insecurity. It can whisper lies until they sound familiar. But this power does not live in your emotions. It lives in your identity. An identity anchored in Christ cannot be invaded. That is why some attacks never reach your core. That is why certain traps failed before they fully formed. That is why what was meant to possess you only passed by you. Not because you were smarter. Not because you were stronger. But because heaven built a boundary around what belongs to God. There are spiritual forces that study behavior. They observe reactions. They look for cracks. Unhealed wounds, unchecked pride, unresolved bitterness. But what they found in you confused them. You didn't break the way they expected. You didn't fold the way they planned. You didn't turn cold, bitter, or cruel. You bent. And bending without breaking is a sign of divine reinforcement. That is why the pressure intensified instead of stopping. Because when darkness realizes it cannot touch your core, it tries to wear you down instead. But even that failed. The power heaven gave you does not operate through domination. It operates through authority. Authority does not argue. It does not chase. It does not defend itself. It simply stands. That is why Jesus never panicked in storms. That is why demons spoke before he did. That is why chaos obeyed his silence. And that same Spirit, not a fraction, not an echo, the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead, lives in you. That is not poetry. That is legal authority in the spiritual realm. This power cannot be cursed. It cannot be drained. It cannot be reversed. It is not activated by shouting prayers or dramatic displays. It activates when you remain obedient. Obedience terrifies darkness more than talent ever could, because obedience keeps you under covering. And anything under divine covering is untouchable by demonic hands. That is why attacks sometimes stopped suddenly. That is why certain doors closed without explanation. That is why God removed people you thought you needed, not to punish you, but to protect the power. There were moments when you thought, if this power is real, why does it still hurt? Because being untouchable does not mean being untested. Even Jesus was tempted. Even Jesus was betrayed. Even Jesus carried a cross. But notice this. The cross did not cancel the power. It revealed it. What couldn't be touched was not his body. It was his authority. And authority always outlives pain. What heaven placed inside you is not something demons can steal, because it was never placed in your hands. It was placed in your spirit. Sealed. Protected. Authorized. That is why the enemy can surround you, but cannot enter you. That is why fear visits, but cannot reside. That is why darkness recognizes you, but cannot claim you. So when you feel pressure rising again, remember this. Pressure is proof that the power is intact. If it could be touched, it would have been taken already. But you are still standing, still believing, still discerning, still chosen. Because what heaven gave you, demons can't touch. You were never meant to fit systems built without God. You were never meant to conform to environments that reward compromise. Your discomfort was a signal, not a flaw. You didn't feel at home in shallow conversations. You couldn't tolerate fake peace. You sensed danger before it appeared. That wasn't anxiety. That was discernment. The same power that exposes darkness also protects you from becoming it. That is why demons can observe you, but they cannot enter you. They can suggest. They can intimidate. They can attempt distraction, but they cannot possess what belongs to heaven. There is a season when heaven is silent, and then there is a season when heaven says, now, not later, not when everything feels perfect, not when you finally feel ready. Now, this is that season. You are not entering a new phase because you asked loudly. You are entering it because you endured quietly. Heaven does not activate power in people who seek attention. It activates power in people who remain faithful when no one is watching. And you stayed. For a long time, your power was restrained, not denied. Covered, not cancelled. Delayed, not destroyed. God hid you on purpose. Not because you lacked ability, but because the environment was not yet safe for what you carry. Some anointings cannot be rushed. Some authority must mature in isolation. Some power must be trained in silence. That is why the season felt slow. That is why doors stayed closed. That is why visibility felt postponed. It wasn't rejection. It was containment. But containment has an expiration date. And that date is now. You may feel it in subtle ways. Your prayers are sharper. Your discernment is clearer. Your tolerance for compromise is lower. What once confused you now repels you. What once intimidated you now feels small. That is activation. Not loud. Not dramatic. But undeniable. This season does not begin with applause. It begins with alignment. Heaven activates power when obedience becomes instinct. When you no longer argue with God. When you no longer negotiate truth. When you stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Send me." That shift. That surrender. That quiet yes. That is the ignition point. The reason this activation feels intense is because it carries weight. Activated power attracts resistance. But it also attracts divine reinforcement. You are not stepping out alone. Angels are assigned to what you're stepping into. Grace is released in proportion to the calling. Protection increases as responsibility increases. That is why fear tried to spike right before this moment. Fear is always loud. When it knows its time is short. This is also why distractions tried to multiply. Old habits resurfaced. Old voices got louder. Old opportunities returned with new disguises. Not to bless you, but to delay you. Because the enemy knows something critical. Once this power activates fully, you will not be as easy to interrupt. Your no will carry authority. Your obedience will produce results. Your prayers will disrupt things you cannot yet see. So the war moved from attack to distraction. But you saw it, and you didn't take the bait. This season requires precision, not pressure. You don't need to rush. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to announce what God is doing. Power activated prematurely becomes pride. Power activated in alignment becomes impact. That is why heaven is slowing you down, even as it moves you forward, teaching you when to speak, teaching you when to be silent, teaching you when to move, and when to wait. This is not confusion. This is training for authority. You may notice that people are starting to respond differently to you. Some are drawn without understanding why. Some feel exposed around you. Some become uncomfortable in your presence. That's not because you changed your personality. It's because your spiritual temperature increased. Light doesn't argue with darkness. It reveals it. And revelation always forces a decision. This activation will not make you famous. It will make you effective. It will not make life easier. It will make your life meaningful. You will be trusted with conversations that shift destinies, with prayers that break cycles, with moments that require courage instead of comfort. This is not a reward season. It is a responsibility season. And heaven chose you because you won't abuse it. Pay attention in this season. To dreams that feel instructional. To convictions that feel precise. To doors that open effortlessly. And doors that close without explanation. God is leading you with clarity, not confusion. And every step of obedience is activating more of what was already placed inside you. You are not waiting for permission anymore. Heaven has already given it. The question is not whether the power will activate. It already is. The question is whether you will stay aligned. As it does. Because what heaven activates in alignment cannot be stopped by resistance. This season is not coming. It is here. Hell is not afraid of your talent. It is afraid of your obedience. It is afraid of what happens when you fully surrender. Because surrendered power is unstoppable. That is why distractions increased. That is why delays tried to frustrate you. That is why temptation came disguised as opportunity. But demons miscalculated one thing. You didn't quit. You didn't harden your heart. You didn't lose your faith. You endured. And endurance activates authority. Take a deep breath. This is where the shift happens. You are not waiting for power. Power is waiting for alignment. Say this quietly in your spirit. I receive what heaven placed in me. I walk in authority, not fear. I am covered. I am protected. I am sent. From this moment forward, confusion loses its grip. Fear loses its voice. Intimidation loses its power. Because what heaven gave you, demons cannot touch. If you are still here, listening to these words, it is because something inside you already knows the truth. Your life was never random. The confusion you walked through, The seasons that didn't make sense. The prayers that felt unanswered. The waiting that stretched longer than you expected. None of it was wasted. Every delay trained you. Every tear refined you. Every closed door redirected you. What felt like loss was actually alignment. You are not behind. You were being positioned. God never rushed what He planned to sustain. He never revealed what you weren't ready to protect. And He never activated power in people who would use it to glorify themselves. That's why your process was long. Because what you carry is heavy with purpose. Look at where you are now. You didn't quit. You didn't turn bitter. You didn't lose your faith, even when it hurt. You survived seasons that were designed to make you numb. That alone proves something important. You were never weak. You were being strengthened quietly. This is not the end of the struggle, but it is the end of confusion. From this point forward, things will begin to make sense. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because your discernment has matured. You will know when to move. You will know when to wait. You will know when to speak. And when silence carries more authority. That clarity is not learned. It is given. You may not see the full picture yet, but heaven does. And heaven trusts you enough to walk you into it step by step. Not all at once. Not loudly, but faithfully. The calling on your life is unfolding in layers. And each layer requires a deeper level of obedience. This is not about doing more. It's about staying aligned. As you leave this message, remember this. You are not chasing purpose. Purpose is catching up to your obedience. You are not trying to become chosen. You already were. You are not waiting for power. Power is responding to your surrender. There will be moments ahead that test your humility. Moments that test your patience. Moments that test your courage. But you will not face them unprepared. Grace will meet you where obedience leads you. Strength will rise when pressure increases. And peace will guard you even in spiritual warfare. Because what heaven started in you, He intends to finish. So walk forward without fear. You are covered. You are guided. You are authorized. And when doubts try to return, remember how far you've already come. This was not the breakthrough. It was the invitation. This was not the arrival. It was the awakening. This is not the end. This is only the beginning. Chosen one, before you go, I want to speak to the givers, the ones whose hearts feel called to pour back into the vessel that pours into them. If this message awakened you, if it strengthened you, if it spoke to your spirit in a way only heaven could orchestrate, then I invite you, only if your heart feels led, to sow a $1 seed into this channel. Not because God needs it, but because giving is a spiritual law. A small seed carries big obedience. And God multiplies what is given with pure intention. Your $1 keeps this ministry alive, keeps the messages flowing, and helps this word reach the next chosen one who needs it. If you feel that nudge in your spirit, if you feel that gentle pull, you can plant your $1 seed using the link in the description. And if you can't or don't feel led, you are still loved, still seen, and still covered. Blessings to every giver, and blessings to every listener. Your seed moves heaven in ways you may never see. But God sees it all.